Forget about books in unreadable post-structuralist French and ancient Greek. If you want to truly understand philosophy, you better turn to Netflix or your closest cinema. Our next guest will explain us how and why. Please welcome philosopher and PhD student in theoretical philosophy, Sam Rijken.
Hello.
Sam, welcome.
Thank you.
Are you a fan of the IFFR, the film festival?
I am, yeah, but I haven't visited yet this year.
You haven't visited this year, but are you planning to, or?
I am, yeah. I've heard a lot about Parasite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Already it's in black and white, I think. It was already in the cinemas, but now it's in black and white. Should see it. Absolutely.
I will, yeah.
You're here to talk about film and philosophy. Why is this an interesting subject to talk about?
Well, philosophy has very big questions that need to be asked over and over again. Big questions that probably will never get a completely satisfactory answer. But we need to keep thinking about them in a familiar and stimulating environment. And a film can provide these environments very well, and they can make you think.
There are a lot of films who try to think, science fiction films, for example, try to think about things we cannot imagine or things we do not know, and they try to visualize it, think about it. Is that always done in a good way? Is it a good marriage between science fiction and philosophy, or science fiction and science? I can imagine a lot is going wrong as well.
Yeah, well, science and philosophy are now two quite distinct things. And in science fiction, the science used to be notoriously bad or outdated. We can all laugh at science fiction movies from the 60s and how they thought the world would be now. But there is a trend now where movies really try to be scientifically accurate. I was looking at this again today. We have Interstellar, of course, but also Gravity, etc. These Hollywood teams, they hire a set of scientists to actually do some actual science and depict the story as accurately as possible.
So, and in the case of Interstellar, I understood it's also sort of helping scientists on the way, since it's such an unknown area. He's going into a black hole, right? That's the story in Interstellar.
Yeah.
Scientists have no clue what's happening whatsoever, and here you have a movie that tries to. And you're saying this might actually be the case.
Yeah. Well, the case of Interstellar is special because it had a gigantic budget, which is nice because the budget in Hollywood is bigger than the budget in science. So we throw some Hollywood money at science, and science improves. And in this case, they wanted to portray a black hole, and a black hole, by definition, it sucks up all the light. So you're not supposed to see a black hole. That's what you think from the definition. But then they started to model it, and they had to put in a lot of effort, and then they got an image which was against the expectations of the scientists who helped them. And they actually learned something new from this accretion disk and the actual shape of it, and how the top part of the black hole is different from the bottom part. This was new insight, and some new papers were published because of it.
Okay. You said that if there is one philosophical dilemma or issue I can bring up, then it would be the brain in the vat thought experiment. Can you say something about that and why this is so interesting for you as a philosopher, and to make the connection with cinema as well?
Yeah, well, as I said, we have some very big questions in philosophy, and the fun with these questions is that they were posed straight at the beginning of philosophy. Already, Plato, which is already working in a tradition, but he asked in the clearest way, how can I be sure, or can I be sure at all, that my world of experience corresponds to the real world? And if so, to what degree? And this question, yeah, well, the answer is, which he already found at the beginning, is you can't. You really just can't. But to really feel the sting of this answer, you need to portray this question and the answer and think about it in a familiar environment. And this environment changes. Plato thought about it in a cave. Descartes thought in medieval or late medieval time. Well, here we see the cave. Plato imagines some people chained in a cave, and they only see shades of the outside world on the wall. And that's all they experience their entire life. Then they would... Yeah, it gets quite complicated quickly with Plato, but if you're stuck in this cave...
So this is us. We're not seeing anything of the real world.
Yeah.
We're just seeing shades of what might be happening in the real world.
Yeah. And interestingly, Plato already asked himself, what happens when you get dragged outside the cave? You get blinded by the sunlight. The truth actually hurts. And in his specific depiction of this thought experiment, it's very natural, because you can imagine yourself being blinded by the sunlight.
Yeah, I said I have to bring some movies to illustrate this idea. Then there are 3 important movies to show us tonight. Can you tell us something about this? Is the first, I guess.
Yeah, this is Dogtooth. That's my favorite movie by Yorgos Lanthimos, and it's about a family that has to grow up within the confines of their own house. That's all they know. But sometimes you get a little bit of influence from outside the house. So the children know there is an outside, they just can't know anything about it. So when they do get a little bit of information, the parents try to redirect it to something in the house. And this takes up quite comical forms, as you see in this fragment, I think.
Let's have a look.
Μαμά, τι είναι μουνή?
Πού την είδες αυτή τη λέξη?
Την είδα σε μια θήκη πάνω στη συσκευή που βλέπουμε το βίντεο.
Μουνή είναι η μεγάλη λάμπα. Παράδειγμα. Το μουνί έσβησε και το δωμάτιο βυθίστηκε στο σκοτάδι.
Θέλετε να ακούσουμε τον παππού σας να τραγουδάει?
Ναι!
Ο μπαμπάς μας αγαπάει. Η μαμά μας αγαπάει. Εμείς τους αγαπάμε? Ναι, τους αγαπάμε. Αγαπάω τα αδέρφια μου. Γιατί μ' αγαπούν κι αυτά.
I think this goes on for, I think, the entire song. By the way, it's a really strange film to have as your favorite movie. For those of you who has seen Dogtooth, was here at the festival a couple of years ago. It's really intense. Yeah. He also made Lobster and The Favorite and Killing by a Sacred Deer. I think all really intense movies.
Yeah.
And this is your favorite.
Yeah. They make you think. When I saw this movie, I thought about it. I still think about it. And I saw it maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So then it's a good movie.
Yeah, and why is this so interesting from a philosophical perspective?
Because this is a good thought experiment. In a good thought experiment, you can't just imagine anything and then learn something interesting from it. You have to think according to certain rules if you want to have any sort of confidence in the things that you learn. Mm-hmm. And the director, works through this movie very, very rigidly. The grammar changes of these children according to these new words that they learn. The way they act, it's just very real. It's a good job.
You get sucked into the weird universe they live in.
Yeah. And he asks himself, what would happen if you grow up in isolation with only your children? And this is one very real possibility.
Yeah. Another strange universe, but in an entirely different way, I would say, is this one. Shall we just have a look? And then I think most of the people... do you want to say anything about it?
No, let's take a look.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Truman. You can speak. I can hear you. Who are you? I am the creator of a television show that gives hope and joy and inspiration to millions. Then who am I? You're the star. Was nothing real? You were real. That's what made you so good to watch.
Truman Show.
Yes.
Tell me something about it.
Well, here we see the edge of Truman's world of experience, and right at the moment where he starts to break through. For Truman, it's a very lovely experience. Plato didn't think it would be so lovely as it is for Truman. But here, this is a very nice depiction of what is the boundary of the world of my experience. And again, here it takes up the nice contemporary shape of Big Brother is watching you and we're all scared of surveillance. So this one, everybody knows the Truman Show. It's a classic for a reason.
And just after this, he sort of, for him, it's the question, does he stay or does he go? And you see the entire world watching him and this dilemma, do I stay inside this world whether I know it's, and I still know it's fake? Do I want to stay inside or do I want to get out and possibly be blinded by the sunlight, right? That's the dilemma.
Yeah.
And that will be, I think, a bridge to your last clip you brought.
Yeah, because this dilemma, the film doesn't need to provide an answer. It needs to provide the question, and you can then think of the answer. What would you do? And in The Matrix, they have an example of the other possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other introduction needed, or?
Well, again, about the shape the exact same thought experiment takes now is the computer, of course. We're scared not of demons, not of caves, but of computers. So here, again, this is a good reason why The Matrix is a classic.
Yeah. We don't have to explain The Matrix, right?
Do we have a deal, Mr. Reagan?
You know, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. Is this what comes out of your thought experiment as well? If Sam Rijken had to choose.
Yeah, I'll choose the ignorance. Yeah.
You will choose the ignorance.
But the interesting part here is that this wasn't really an option before. We all know that you can't unknow something. You can't forget something intentionally. And only this very specific form of the thought experiment in the shape of a computer, it opens up a new option. Just erase the data. And this is a new option that arises from looking at the brain as a computer, that you can actually unknow something, maybe. It gives you a new option. Not just a choice, do I want to know about the real world right now, but a new option of let's know about the real world for a little while, and then choose if I want to go back or not.
Yeah. So this will be your suggestion. You would like to know a little bit about it and then go back in.
Then decide. I'm interested. There was this hype about virtual reality for a while. We thought it was going to take over the world, and everybody would just sit with a VR headset in his room like a zombie. which is basically exactly the situation of The Matrix. It didn't really happen yet. Maybe VR isn't exciting enough, or maybe we just choose reality.
You choose reality.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah. Is there anything in the last question coming to recommended reading after a sort of a philosophical discussion? Any philosophers you should read when you're interested in the connection between philosophy and film?
Philosophy and film. Well, it's interesting that in The Matrix they used the philosopher Baudrillard. His work, they used it a lot as a framework for their story, and they asked him to join the director's team and join in making this movie as good as it can be, and he refused. He said, "You completely misunderstand my ideas, and I don't want any part of this." And it's interesting to read up on this. So watch The Matrix, read some of Baudrillard. It's quite unreadable for me, so maybe read a summary, and then
go to the Wikipedia page.
Yeah,
for example,
and then talk
Start
about
over
it with each other.
Yeah.
That was the main point of The Matrix. Start talking.
Okay. Thanks for being here. Sam Rijken.